1/3 of women leave their roles within 18 months of returning from a leave. And there used to be kind of an assumption around that meant women were choosing to stay at home, to remove themselves from the workforce. And there is a small percentage that do choose to do that. And that's wonderful for those who are doing it because it feels like a choice. But for the majority, it was actually women that were going to other companies because the experience that they had in their leave was negative. And when that feeling is left with you, that's where you're like, my company really let me down in a critical moment in my life. It's felt that it's easier for me to start fresh at a new company than dig myself out of the hole that my leave created.
Hi, and welcome to The Weekly Parent, a podcast for people who Google everything, overthink most things, and occasionally spiral, wondering if they're totally screwing it all up. I'm your host, Dr. Kaya Duffy. Look, I'm not here to hand out gold stars or add one more item to your to-do list. Here at The Weekly Parent, we ask real questions of real people who, frankly, know more than we do and try to cut through the noise, filter the advice, and figure out what actually works. Let's dive in. Today, I am joined by Beth Wanner, founder and CEO of Mother Cover, a company dedicated to helping parents and workplaces navigate parental leave with more care, structure, and humanity. Beth brings deep insight into how thoughtful systems can make life better for both employees and employers. And I am so excited and can't wait to dig into this story and the work that she's been doing really to help us reshape how we all think about what parental leave is and what it can be. So Beth, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much for having me.
I thought maybe we could start with a little bit of your background. So can you take us back to that moment, your light bulb moment, when you realized that there was this gap in how parental leave was handled and what made you sort of decide to start this new venture that you're on?
Sure. I would say there was a lot of lead up coming up to it because I would put myself in that category of an accidental entrepreneur. This wasn't where I thought my career path was going to go. So I spent 15 years in the tech industry as a marketing executive. And that's where I thought I was going to live out my career. But in those demanding spaces, I was struggling with how to start my family and when's the right time to start my family. Skipping forward the realization that there never is a right time. So my husband and I finally decided that we were going to go for it. Unfortunately, got hit with the realities of infertility. So it took us a lot longer to start our family. Ended up going through IVF, finally did get pregnant. And 2 days later, I got laid off, which was my nightmare. The thing that I was worried about all along, that my starting my family was going to collide with my career. So I kept going. When I was going through IVF, I kept that a secret because I didn't want to if there's even any kind of assumptions made about what my ambitions would be afterwards, all those sort of things. My layoff didn't have to do with my pregnancy. It was just the luck of the draw on that. But then, because I was early in my pregnancy, I had to go on the job hunt as a pregnant woman. I eventually landed another VP of marketing role at a tech company, shared that I was pregnant, and it was not received well. They were very unhappy about it. And I actually ended up getting fired at 8 months pregnant. And definitely no hope of getting another job at that point. And I ended up sharing my story on LinkedIn. And then I heard from floods of other women, whether it was that same level of discrimination or somewhere along the lines, whether it's women who are getting laid off during pregnancy, during their mat leave, shortly after returning, or just somewhere along that spectrum where they're just still feeling like parenthood is clashing with their career. And now that I had a newborn, I was up late at night anyway, but my wheels were turning about like, why is this still an issue? And why is it so prevalent? I was thinking of putting back on my executive hat of why is this still an issue? And it really came down to that when even in supportive companies, when somebody shares that they're pregnant, hopefully you say congratulations, but then the door shuts and everybody goes, oh no. And again, whether they're vocalizing that or not, the thought is this is going to mean more work for somebody else. You have to figure out how you're going to manage this temporary gap. It doesn't mean missed goals. Does it mean slowed down projects? All those sort of things. And then at the same time, because there's been so many layoffs across various industries, there's been a rise in individuals who are doing contract and fractional work. And whether they found themselves there out of circumstance, they now are really enjoying that type of work. It gives them the freedom, the flexibility, the control that maybe they were missing. So a lot of them are parents themselves, or they're individuals that are senior into their career and they're just at that stage where they're like, I feel like I can do this on my own. So the idea was, how do we marry those individuals with companies that have leaves coming up, create a whole process around it that feels really seamless and white glove, to a sense that like they don't have to take on things that they weren't expecting to be on their plate. We can slot in that individual, really remove that oh no moment that companies have,
Mhm.
while making the parent feel safe and supported, that they can focus on what's important in that moment in their life and come back to their career handed back to them by a supportive leave partner. So that was the long aha moment to starting Mother Cover, and we launched now about a year ago, and it's been an absolute whirlwind in the best way.
First of all, thank you for sharing your story. I'm sorry for the experience that you had. It's so frustrating. As any woman listening who has tried to work and have a family will know, that the situations we find ourselves in, the mental gymnastics we have to do to think about how to have both of these things that seem like we should be able to have them both. It's incredible to me that we still find ourselves here. So thank you for sharing your story. And I have lots of questions about the business side of what you do, but maybe just very succinctly, very clearly, tell me how does Mother Cover work? Like what are the specifics of it? And when you think about what you're actually providing, what is that?
I would say on the grander scale, what we're providing is a different method of workforce planning. But how it works, so right now it's 50-50 of who reaches out to us, whether it's the parent going on leave or it's somebody managing that team that's figuring out kind of what the coverage is going to be. And I think a big shift that has happened is, again, because teams are now leaner than they've ever been. A lot of companies previously have not brought in external backfill. They just disperse the work amongst the existing team. And that's just really not working anymore. It didn't work then either, I would argue, but it's really not working now when everybody's at 115%. They don't have the capacity to take on somebody else's work, even if it is for a 12-week leave. But we're also seeing leaves getting longer as well. So that's adding to it. So we meet with the company. We understand what's critical for that role that's coming up, that's going to be vacant for a period, and we design what that leave actually looks like for them. So everything from the transition period, the overlap with the person going on leave, the actual leave themselves, which we do cover leaves up to full time, but more often than not, it actually is fractional. So for companies who haven't thought about fractional coverage, this is where somebody can step in for 30, 20, 15, or even 10 hours a week, and everybody on what we call our leave partner roster has at least 10 plus years of experience. So they are senior operators. So they know how to step in and have an immediate impact. They're not people that need a lot of onboarding and training, though we do have that overlap period, but that really helps the ramp up period. So again, if it's a 12-week leave, you don't have a month to spend ramping somebody up. So we figure out all those processes and make it really seamless for them. And then we go to our lead partner roster. So the individuals that are pre-vetted, they're referred to us, they are highly trusted, and they are across all different types of disciplines. So it could be HR, could be finance, marketing, sales, operations. We find the right person for that company and the specific needs that they have. And then we go through introductions. We go through, then if everything's looking good, the training and onboarding and all those sort of things get kind of, like I said, that white glove treatment for them. But we look at it as we've got really three stakeholders throughout the whole experience. It's the leave partner themselves. We're involved the whole way to make sure that they have all the tools and the support that they need to be successful in that role. And then it's the parent as well, making sure that they feel like their work baby is in safe hands. We say that it's not the same as feeling like your work is paused. We are stepping into your strategy, carrying your work forward, keeping your name spoken in the rooms that you are now temporarily absent from, and carrying forward your strategy and handing it back to you as if you were still in seat and you've carried through that momentum. And then for the company, it's that continuity, knowing that they don't have to make a trade off between, do I support my employee or do I support the performance of my company? You can do both.
Yeah. So when you were starting, was it kind of like Amazon where you chose one industry or one area, maybe marketing, given that was a space that you knew, and really worked to sort of hone that process and processes and the vetting and the sort of building up of the leave partners? Or was it not like that at all? And and then you expanded beyond into HR and finance and sales and all those sorts of things. Or what did that process look like in building Mother Cover and starting?
Yeah, the original thought was to focus mainly on marketing because, again, that is my background and where my primary network comes from. But I think that maybe lasted a month. And then it was expanding from there. And it was really putting out this story and hearing from so many people that this resonated with, that wanted to be a part of it. So whether it was those who wanted to be leave partners, that quickly expanded our roster to be able to say when companies reached out to us, yes, I confidently have somebody that's a perfect HR fit or a perfect finance fit. A lot of the process is the same regardless of role, but it does feel very tailored to what the company specifically needs. So when we're talking about how to design that transition period and all of that is very customized, but it's coming from the best practices that we've quickly built of what does this look like on a human level, and then generally what makes it um, structured to be able to carry forward performance in a really seamless way, that again, it doesn't feel like a burden, for lack of a better word. That is a word that often comes up from both sides. Of the parent feels like they're a burden to their team, the company feels like we've got to figure this out, we want to be supportive, but this is now extra work on us. So removing that burden was really the important part.
I imagine that there are other costs to getting it wrong, the way that leave tends to be handled. From your perspective and in your experience, what are some of those costs to not being more thoughtful in handling leave like you are?
Yeah, the costs are huge, and I think they've largely gone unspoken until recently. There's been more and more studies that are really uncovering what the true cost is, and there are stats in that are mirrored in both Canada and the US, that one third of women leave their roles within 18 months of returning from a leave. And there used to be kind of an assumption around that meant women were choosing to stay at home, to remove themselves from the workforce. And there is a small percentage that do choose to do that. And that's wonderful for those who are doing it because it feels like a choice. Um, but for the majority, it was actually women that were going to other companies because the experience that they had in their leave was negative, where they didn't feel either supported in the transition, they didn't feel supported during their leave, or they didn't feel supported during the re-onboarding phase, which is really overlooked of how important that is. And when that feeling is left with you, that's where you're like, my company really let me down in a critical moment in my life. If the work was dispersed amongst the team and the team was burnt out, there's resentment there. There may be those missed goals. And it's felt that it's easier for me to start fresh at a new company than dig myself out of the hole that my leave created. So recognizing that as a cost, a huge cost of turnover, it can cost up to 200% of an individual salary to replace them. There's also more study on the turnover of the team itself. So it's not just the individual going on leave, but the burnout of the team, percentage of them turning over. And then we've had stories of women in account management. She said all of my accounts were handed to somebody else that didn't have the capacity to manage them. They naturally took care of their accounts first, and those other accounts were secondary. All those accounts churned and left. And then when the person returned, they ended up getting laid off because they didn't have accounts to manage anymore. So there's the cost of losing that person, but then there's the business cost of you lost clients during that when it wasn't a thoughtful leave coverage plan. So there's real tangible cost to overlooking this, and I do believe that most companies want to do the right thing. And we've thought like, well, we have more and more companies offering paid leave or having some sort of leave. That's not enough. Policy is not enough. We have to show that it's safe to take leave, that you're supported to take leave so that parents, again, don't feel like this is going to be a burden. My team's going to have to hold this, or something else negative is going to come of this.
You mentioned the experience of coming back to work after leave, and that can be a less than stellar experience for some people. What have you seen in my own experience? Um, when I had my first baby, I had just finished my PhD and had the great freedom to come back to work on a part-time basis. My husband was still in graduate school. We split time. We were able to do our work on that condensed timeline. I was more productive in those 4 hours in the office than I had been 8 hours because I knew that's what I had and there was no water cooler chat. I was just,
Yeah.
there and doing my research. And then with my other two babies, I was consulting and had a completely flexible schedule. So never had this experience of coming back to an organization where I had stepped away in that re-onboarding to a job that you have stepped away from even temporarily. What does it look like when that is done well?
When that is done well, it's kind of like your first example that you shared. It doesn't necessarily have to go to part time, but being able to do a phased re-onboarding is really the gold standard. And that's where we can help support as well. So, ideal scenario, if a company's able to offer this flexibility as the person returning can slowly ramp up, their leave partner is slowly ramping down. So we can have that overlap, that smooth handoff as well too, so that it's not like you were on leave and then all of a sudden you're back to work 5 days a week and you're expected to be as if nothing has changed. Some of the worst things somebody can say is "Thank God you're back," which sounds so innocent, but it puts again so much pressure on somebody of like, oh, again, it was hard while you were gone. We're so glad you can just slot back in as if nothing has changed. So being able to do a phased re-onboarding, if you can't offer that, even starting on a Wednesday versus a Monday, can help that transition, and then open communication, acknowledging. There's even just small things where it's very common to forget when that person is what their return date is. So remembering that that's the return date, reaching out to them in the weeks before to make sure, see how they're feeling, make sure the team knows when they're returning, have scheduled, maybe if it's even 15-minute little coffee introductions, welcome back with their teams, and almost treating it like you are onboarding a new employee, and really taking them through that welcome process. Again, like I said, communication is just huge if they are doing things like pumping and breastfeeding, accommodating what that will look like, and that can be really stressful for them, being reassuring them that you're there to help whatever kind of boundaries they need, accommodations to their schedule that they need, and having that open communication, having a 30, 60, 90 for them is really helpful, kind of painting that roadmap for them so they don't have to figure out what good looks like and what that expectation is for them.
For companies that may be interested in this and really truly do want to be more thoughtful in their approach to how they handle this, but maybe they're not certain where to start, what are some practical first steps?
If they're thinking of how to provide a better experience. Sometimes if they don't have one already, it's starting an employee resource group so you can get the feedback from your employees who've gone through this already and in a safe way. And sometimes those who feel the most safe to share what that experience is like is those who aren't in that phase of life anymore. And it's those who are being able to advocate for those who come after them. So those are sometimes a good wealth of feedback for you to start with to start building that culture. So then those who are maybe in that phase of life also feel comfortable adding that voice to them. But you could also reach out to Mother Cover. We're happy to be able to share what we've seen as best practices, what we hear from others. And then there's also great other resources out there like Parentally in the US, Matern in Canada. They really specialize in helping companies develop communication strategies, policies, training for managers, because again, it's not just the person going on leave that needs to figure this out and what it looks like to be well supported. So it's great to see that there is more of a caregiver economy out there that's wanting to help companies so you don't have to figure this out by yourself.
From the parent perspective, then, if there is anyone who's listening who is in a workplace, an organization that where maybe they don't necessarily feel so supported or they're nervous about having this, is there any advice you would give parents who want to know how they can advocate and may be a little nervous about doing so?
Yeah, I think the best advice that I can give is framing it as a business decision. This isn't about charity or yes, there is the feel good side of it if you want to support your employee, but there's a business motivation behind this. So being able to share those stats about what a negative or less than ideal leave experience looks like, the impact that that can have to the company, and that this also just isn't a woman's issue anymore. There's more men, fathers that we need and want to take parental leave. And this also isn't just about expanding families. We are in the sandwich generation now as well. So, those who are taking care of aging parents, you may need medical leave, mental health leave, all those sort of things. So, bringing up that most companies do want to do the right thing. They're just bogged down with a whole bunch of different things. So, the easier that you can make this kind of paint the picture as well as the solution all in one really, again, helps take that off their plate and say that there's an easy way to do this. We just maybe haven't thought of it this way.
So I was going to ask about this. I personally have to take sort of an unknown amount of time off in a little while for surgery. And so as you were talking, I was thinking, yes, there is parental leave, but there may also be situations of medical leave where
Yes.
people need cover. And you just suggested, even for something like medical leave, or like you said, you've got sick parents and you're caring for them. So it goes beyond just taking parental leave for a new family.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, like this isn't where some might say like, well, maybe only 5% of my workforce is going to take parental leave, but all of them have something that they care about outside of their career that may need them to take a step back for a temporary amount of time. And is it that you're going to force that person to make a trade-off? Do I deal with this important thing in my life right now and sacrifice my career, or can it be done safely that they can manage both? I think that that's where the best companies are going to be going is looking at workforce planning differently, looking at the life cycle of an employee differently, and that it doesn't have to be these high turnover, high stakes periods for somebody.
Yeah. Gosh, you know what else I'm thinking about, Beth? My husband is a professor at the university here. And every 7 years, they are eligible for sabbatical or research leave. Coming back from research leave, you feel like I am ready to be back in my job and you're excited about it in a whole new way. So, gosh, imagine if companies had this forward thinking workforce planning, like you're talking about, even just to give employees the opportunity to go someplace else for a few months or 6 months and try something new, bring those ideas back to the company. And what you've built is a structure to allow that really for anybody. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Yes, yeah. We also think of like Gen Z and the younger generations. What they're signaling that they care about is being able to have that flexibility and be able to say like, I don't know if I'm going to be healthy in my retirement. I don't want to wait to live my life then. Maybe I want to take a year off traveling. Maybe that's probably going to be unpaid, depending on the company, most likely. But being able to have the flexibility to do that again means you get to retain your employees. But there's a path to being able to make sure that that's not a disruption to the company as well. And there are larger enterprise companies that have a little bit of this built into their workforces where they have some redundancy for this specific reason is that they always have kind of that extra coverage that they can move around within their company. For small and medium-sized businesses, that's not realistic, and this is where having a service, having a partner like Mother Cover can make that something that they can compete and offer with too. So it's not just the giant tech companies that can have that type of culture and job security and flexibility.
If there is one thing that you wanted to make sure a listener leave this conversation hearing very explicitly.
I want them to feel like they have a partner, that they are not alone in this. So whether it's figuring out how to navigate it with Mother Cover, or there's lots of parental or motherhood or parenthood coaches out there that, like I said, this is kind of becoming an industry unto itself of recognizing that we need the village that we've always talked about. It just looks different these days. So you don't have to figure this out on your own. And there are ways to kind of advocate for what you need. It's not about having it all, but it's about being able to kind of navigate the existing system and help change where we need it to go.
Yeah. I don't think that we can, and I don't think that I want it. And I think it's really having it all needs to be a definition of what is most important to you. Like that's what we should be striving for. And that takes some soul searching. That takes some really careful consideration of for each of us, where am I? And what is it that I do want? And I think one of the things that was hard for me in having my first baby especially, I don't think I could have known ahead of time what it was I wanted. And so I also had to remember to keep asking myself that question. You know, you don't ask it once and then it's over and you have your answer and it's done. Like I changed, baby changes, kids grow, husband's job changes. This is something we need to be asking ourselves again and again. Is this still the universe of things that I want most right now? And if not, what is missing or what do I want instead? And how can I help the world around me help me get those things?
Yeah. And the permission that that can change and does change. Um, we play when you think of the grand timeline of parenthood, we play such a small role in the very beginning of it. But even just decisions like how long should I take for leave? One of the things that we talk parents through is that you don't have to know up front. And that's also how the flexibility of our contracts work. So I always say, let's plan for the longest amount of time because then your company is prepared for that. But if the longest amount of time that they're
They allow. Uh-huh.
to take, obviously that there's lots of different factors that go into that. You can't always just say this is the infinite amount of time that I want to take, but within those parameters, but that we can say you can change your mind. This is your role. So if you decide that you want to come back earlier, wonderful. Your role will be ready for you. If you decide and are allowed to extend it, great. We'll cover for you until you want to come back. So again, just those small decisions that you don't have to say, like, I know for sure how this is going to look. And the same with that re-onboarding plan. We do encourage people to document a re-onboarding plan before they go on leave because it just kind of sets that expectation. You have that kind of documented of what you imagine a good scenario will be, but having constant conversations and the freedom to say, like, this is what I thought it was. It's now this. Can we accommodate that and having those conversations? So same on the manager side, checking in a couple weeks before they return, and then maybe the week that they get back is far from not enough. You have to constantly be checking in and being proactive on that side.
Which can be a challenge to remember.
Yes.
that these are things we have to do again. And undercurrent, and what I've heard through everything you've described is the importance of communication. But what you're describing is the need to have that kind of line of open communication. I know sometimes bringing issues up can feel like you're being a burden or you are complaining, but really, um, just wanting to make space for everyone being able to work through an issue and find a solution that works for everyone, not just the complaining of it.
Yeah, I think that that's absolutely right. Like communication is at the heart of all of this. And I think we've previously had cultures where talking about this has been a little bit more taboo or this isn't for the workplace, but it absolutely is. We talk about bringing your whole self to work. This is what that looks like. And again, so whether it's advocacy for yourself or it's for those who are later on, if you're thinking about like how do I give back, how do I be an advocate, use your position of privilege that you're in at that point where you're in a little bit of a safer spot, you're not the vulnerable one. Advocate for those who come after you and start talking about these things in the workplace, and it'll make it safer for those who are in that spot in life to also advocate for themselves.
So when you think about all of this and you spend your days thinking and talking about this, what is it that gives you hope as you look to the future? The future of work, the future of caregiving, the future of, even as we've been describing here, just sort of building a life that allows for work, family, play. What do you see that is giving you hope?
Two sides. It's I speak to women every single day and some men too that have found us and stumbled upon us and say like, I can't believe this hasn't existed before. How do we make sure that this exists? And they tell their personal stories. So my story was the fuel to get this started. Everybody else's story is the fuel to keep this going, and that this needs to grow. Whether it's they had a not great story themselves and they want to provide something better for those who come after them, or they've had a great story and they're like, I recognize that that's rare and I want to provide that for somebody else. Just that kind of ground roots movement that I feel that we've tapped into is what really gives me hope that I was like, there's a lot of people out there that recognize that this isn't a great experience right now and it needs and can be better. And then the amount of companies that have reached out to us and have found us mainly organically in this last year that they recognize that this needs to be different and have just been kind of looking for an answer for how they can operationalize it. So when we just read the headlines, when we see the exodus of women from the workforce, a lot of them are going to starting companies that they wish they had, similar to my story, and knowing that that's happening underneath the surface is what makes me really hopeful and excited. We can be your partner in this. We know that if we don't acknowledge that leaves are logistically challenging for companies, if we ignore that side of the conversation and we just go off the heart of like, this is what we want to be able to do from a human to human standpoint, we're missing half of the equation. So that's really the void that Mother Cover wants to fill. We care deeply about the person going on leave and making sure that they feel supported, safe, that the career they worked hard on is going to be there for them when they come back. But being able to balance that with the company's needs, that there are realities around that side, I think that that's been missing from the conversation and can feel hard to bring into it. But what about the projects and the goals and the revenue that is the reality of being able to support that person going on leave? So being able to have both of those in the conversation is really important.
So, if people were interested in connecting with you and learning more, either for themselves, for their companies, where can they do that?
They can go to our website, which is mothercoveragency.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always talking about this stuff, not obviously just Mother Cover, but the things that we're either uncovering or things that just are important to get out into the everyday conversation. You can find us, we share our content on our work Instagram as well as our work LinkedIn too. So also Mother Cover Agency.
Fantastic. Mother Cover. Go check it out. If you are an employee, go check it out. If you are an employer, go check it out. Share with your friends. Beth, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for hanging out with me on The Weekly Parent. If something you heard today made you think, laugh, or feel just a little more human, don't be shy. Subscribe, text it to your BFF or group chat, or leave us a review. Remember, you'll find free tools, downloads, and whatever else I've cooked up this week in the show notes. Check those out. Parenting is messy. Let's not do it alone. See you next time.